Hello YouTubers, and welcome to the second of my Doctor Who Classic Series figure reviews. Today I shall be reviewing the Cyber Controller from Tomb of the Cybermen, which is of course the Builder-figure from the new Cyberman wave. Now, before I start, as you all know, I don't have all of the Cybermen yet, so I have to thank the TheCyberPlanner very much for offering me the pieces that I needed to complete my Cyber Controller. He's been doing lots of army building for different Cybermen and had some spare parts left over, and asked if I wanted a replacement head for my Cyber Controller because the quality wasn't particularly good when I bought the figure. It had lots of scratches on it and glue everywhere. So he asked if I wanted a replacement, and then subsequently offered me any other pieces that I needed to complete my Cyber Controller. So thank you very much, TheCyberPlanner. I shall begin by looking at the articulation of this figure. So to begin with, obviously it's the Cyber Controller as portrayed by Michael Kilgareth in the 1967 story Tomb of the Cybermen, one of the all-time great classic Cybermen stories. A personal favourite. So if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend going out and buying it on DVD, because it is an absolutely fantastic story. So, the head has no articulation. That's not a problem. The head didn't move in the story. The arms can do 360 degree turn. The tubes on the shoulders do sort of get in the way slightly, but not overly. We have articulation at the bicep. It can't do a 360 turn due to the tubing on the arms, which is absolutely brilliant because it's a very good rubbery material, so it doesn't block articulation too much. I mean, obviously, no one's arm is going to do a 360 degree turn. So that's all very good. Obviously, we have articulation at the elbow and at the hands, and they can do a 360. Articulation at the waist, that can do a 360. At the hips, and they can bend freely. No blocking as with the 10th Planet Cyberman. We have articulation at the knees, which isn't hindered by the 4 tubes on the legs. And we have articulation at the feet, and they can do 360 degree turns. So that's the articulation, which is all the sort of normal articulation we've come to expect for the Doctor Who range. Now let's look at the detail. Right, well, I'll begin with the head. So, first of all, as I said before, the head has no articulation, like the original helmet. The dome, the cranium dome of the helmet has a plastic shell over the top of it, which has the veins painted on top, like in the story. In the episode, it did light up. It's not very noticeable on screen, but sometimes if you catch it in the right light, kind of a bit like now, I suppose, it does have a sort of glowy sort of a glowing sort of thing going on. It isn't very noticeable, but then again, it wasn't overly noticeable in the story either. They've added in the holes on the side of the cheeks on the helmet, which is very good. I take it that was just the air holes for Michael Kilgareth to breathe. And they've even kept in this thin line down here and just under the helmet, which is of course the backing plate of the helmet, which would be clipped on to encase the actor. Now this box piece, I take it, is where the electronics for the light up head were stored. I'm not 100% sure about that, but that's how it was in the episode. And of course, the face is as it was in the episode, and they've gone for what appears to be an open mouth. The Cyber Controller and the Cybermen in that story had letterbox mouths, and basically, when one spoke, there was like a little flap, and it would move down, the line would come out, and then it would close. This one is quite deep, so I take it it's meant to be an open version of the mouth. Now, from what I can tell, and from what I've seen of the two Cybermen figures, the torso and the arms are, I think, exactly the same sculpt, obviously not with the chest unit on it, but I think the sculpt's quite similar, especially the arms. The creases seem to be exactly the same. Unlike the Tomb Cyberman, it has tubes up here, all very detailed in terms of the creases of the costume and that sort of thing, even on the back. And for the legs, we have the two tubes on each legs, as opposed to the one, I think, that the Tomb Cybermen usually have. And of course, the Cyber Controller, the legs, is basically, I take it he just didn't tuck the trouser legs into his boots, which can look a bit silly, but it's still a very good figure nonetheless. But overall, there isn't really much to say in terms of detail. I mean, the costume, it isn't like your conventional Cyberman with a chest piece which has all these little bits and pieces on it. It's quite basic, but it's still a very nice figure and a very accurate interpretation of the character from the story with Patrick Troughton. The head looks a bit chubby. When I watched the story recently, and I thought that the head was much thinner than on the figure. At some shots like this, for instance, it does seem to have little in the way. I mean, the chin is quite sloped. In the story, I'm sure that there's more of a chin there, but it's not overly noticeable. It's just me being nitpicky. And I think because some of the body parts are probably reused from the Tomb Cyberman, he isn't as tall as I thought he'd be. I've seen pictures of that people have taken of the Cyber Controller next to a Tomb Cyberman, and he doesn't seem to be that much taller than them, which is a shame, because when you watch the story, the normal Cybermen are sort of like up to here on the Cyber Controller. He's a very tall chap, and they even put padding in the bottom of his shoes to make him even taller. But overall, an excellent figure, a nice figure to have as a builder figure, something that I wasn't expecting to see. And yeah, I highly recommend trying to get hold of this figure. Go out and see if you can collect all four pieces, or all four Cybermen, to collect all the pieces. For my next review, I'm not sure what I'll be doing yet. I think it will most likely be the Dalek Collector set, as that was the first classic series action figures to be released. However, if I happen to get my hands on any of the Cybermen, I shall be reviewing those instead. So I shall update regularly on my channel. So that's the Tomb of the Cybermen Cyber Controller. Very nice figure. as I said, not much in the way of detail, but still a very accurate interpretation of the character. So I have to give this figure a 10 out of 10. Hardly any faults with it at all. So thanks once again to TheCyberPlanner, and tune in this Saturday for part 1 of my upcoming action figure adventure, The Kingdom of Blood, starring Peter Davison.